Sangeet, tell me, what do maps and artificial intelligence have in common?
I'm glad you bring that up, Sophia. Maps is one of the best examples that I think we have in terms of understanding how AI can actually change our world. And I use the idea of maps because the point that I want to make is that a technology doesn't have to, beat human benchmarks to transform the world around us. A technology that is narrowly performant can also transform the world in very meaningful ways. Now, if you look at our experience of using maps, before the current GPS based navigation applications came out, traditionally we used to use paper maps. Paper maps were static. And while they helped us make sense of the world, there was only so much effect they had on the world around us. What happens with maps is a GPS based navigation application today, which works on Google Maps or an equivalent, starts by creating a representation of the world. And I think that's the starting point for any AI system as well. If you look at any AI system, it creates a representation of the world, it models how it sees the world, whether it's a sensor based industrial system that's capturing data from industrial processes, or whether it's a large language model. It's essentially working off its understanding of what the world looks like. So, a map, first and foremost, creates a representation of the world on the basis of which it helps other users make better decisions and actions and take better actions. So, the key decision that Google Maps or Waze helps us with today is around navigation. How do I get from point A to point B most effectively? And on the basis of that, it then gives me turn by turn directions which guide my action, which, if you really think of it, replaces a job that would traditionally have been performed by a navigator sitting next to you with a paper map in hand. And so that's what the Google Maps lady essentially performs in substitution of that human role today. And in many ways, we may think of the effect of maps stopping over there, but if you really think about how our cities have transformed, how our traffic patterns have transformed, when everybody starts using GPS based navigation applications, traffic patterns evolve in response. So the larger ecosystem of traffic movements evolves in response to the information that maps are processing, or these applications are processing, and the decisions that they are helping users make about where to route and how. So really, maps is a great example to think about how a very narrowly performant technology can have fundamentally large impact on how the overall ecosystem works. So today you might have a quiet neighborhood, and tomorrow it might be part of a thoroughfare, just uh, because of changes in navigation patterns. Google Maps or Waze redirected most users in that direction. And I'll just close by saying that the five key things that a map is doing over here is, first of all, it's creating a representation of the world. That's what all AI systems do. On the basis of that, it's guiding users to make decisions and take action, which is again how AI has a potential to rewire our knowledge workflows today. But most importantly, what the map does is it rewires how the various players in that ecosystem, in this case, every other driver, every other person who is using this application, how they interact with each other, how they coordinate their activities. Even though they don't coordinate it explicitly, the map coordinates them implicitly to avoid traffic jams and bottlenecks from forming. And that's really where I believe the power of AI lies, in reorienting coordination the way maps does that in the real world.
Nike was being designed in the US and manufactured in Japan, if I'm correct.
That's
And
absolutely right.
that was really revolutionary because basically where things were designed previously was where they were manufactured, because you just didn't have this supply chain, you didn't have organized container shipping, you didn't have all of this coordination. But then when shipping changed, that basically meant that how everything got made got changed. And so Nike was one of the revolutionaries there.
That's absolutely right. What really made that shift happen was that shipping became reliable, so you could work and even externally govern activities that were happening in another part of the world. And I think that particular lesson is interesting when we look at Shein, because Shein is really an outcome of a new technology of coordination, which is algorithmic coordination that's possible today. The way Shein works is that unlike a traditional player like Nike, which would work on large batches and bring out a whole new seasonal collection, and this applies even more to fashion than it does to sportswear. But unlike traditional players of this form, Shein, first of all, works on constantly sensing the market by capturing demand signals from social media. And this particular piece is important because this ability to constantly sense the market fundamentally changes the architecture of the supply chain. Because traditionally, the way fashion in particular worked was you would have merchandisers travel to Tokyo or to Milan, figure out the new styles, and then curate a new collection for the next season. What Shein does is it constantly curates collections, and it does not finalize the collection until it's actually tested it. So what that means is it also changes the size of the batch that gets produced. A micro batch gets produced based on a micro trend that Shein identifies, and then it tests that in the market. And if it gets validated, it increases the production. If it doesn't get validated, it moves to the next micro trend. And the reason that's important is there's a very tight feedback loop between the demand side and the supply side that's created. Because a lot of this can be managed algorithmically, you don't have to have slow manual processes in between, which was really the constraint that forced longer cycles of turnaround and hence larger batch production. So once that constraint goes away, smaller cycles, quicker cycles with shorter batches come in. And the final point that's very interesting about Shein is it actually changes the job of the designer as well. It does not automate the job of the designer, but the more it learns from all of this data, the more it modularizes the job of the designer, so that a designer is reduced to micro tasks. They're given very specific tasks to perform on designing or on modifying a particular design, so that over time who can become a designer also fundamentally changes in the Shein value chain. I think there are two factors that are kind of keeping things at that stage. The first is it doesn't take a lot of imagination, while at the same time you can piggyback on constantly improving models. So all the capital is anyway flowing into the models. Might as well just wait and see what else we can automate with the next model coming in. That's the dominant mindset that a lot of companies have. It takes a lot more imagination and a lot more risk to rethink and reorient your business around AI. So that's one big reason we are still stuck in that trap. The second big reason is really that when the pace of innovation is the way we see today, it's a breakneck pace of innovation. There is a lot of noise that comes with it. There's a lot of hype that comes with it. So it's difficult for business leaders to clearly and credibly differentiate between what is just hype and what is actually possible. And when that kind of uncertainty comes into any new technology, and we saw that in the early 2010s with digital as well. In such phases, business leaders are a lot more hesitant. But once a few use cases play out and a little bit of the hype gets corrected, we will hopefully see companies think more strategically about what's possible with AI.
So a thing that actually was brought up at the conference yesterday was somebody was talking about the second mover advantage or the third mover advantage, because they were saying, well, yes, this is something that we're really interested in, but exactly what you're saying, there are so many issues right now, and frankly, the low hanging fruit is paying off. Our costs are getting lower, margins are higher, like life is getting good. And what he was saying is that actually there are benefits to not being the first, because the first is the pioneer who basically gets hurt and makes all the mistakes. And this reminds me of Apple, because Apple is not a first mover in general. In some ways they are, but in general, they take something that already exists but isn't super great, and then they take this existing thing and they make it super amazing. Like the technology in the iPhone had already existed, but Steve Jobs put it into an amazing, beautiful design, and here we are today.